I have followed the instructions completely as the pattern outline, and my flying geese don't work out. Don't worry, I've got you covered. I know the tricks to stop all of those problems and keep your flying geese flying south in an orderly manner. This is video 1 of a 3-part series on how to get perfect flying geese. We're going to start with the traditional method today. That is just one at a time, so you'll have the perfect flying goose. So let's start first off. I have created, with the help of camera guy or quilter's husband, whatever you want to call him, a flying geese sheet. And it has all steps for everything that we're doing, plus the cutting guides and the sewing guides all pictured out. So you can print this out and follow along if you want to, or you can watch and then print it out and then sit down and sew and have all kinds of fun. I will be doing 2x4 size finished flying geese. So to do those, and I'm doing it in all 3 ways, but to do those, you're going to need a rotary cutter, marking pen. This is a water-soluble marking pen. My favorite flying geese tool is the block lock ruler, so we will be using the block lock ruler. I also have a Creative Grids 3.5 by 12.5 ruler. I have my glasses in case I need them, and a rotating mat. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is the one-at-a-time method. This is the slowest method. This is probably the most traditional method as well. This is how I learned, and I have been super frustrated every time I've had to make flying geese this way because they're never quite right. So hopefully with my tips today, we'll get closer and you'll see why they're not always quite right. But I don't know. This is what most people teach and most people write their patterns for. So check if you're doing a star or a flying goose, geese, quilt or something. Check and see what the cutting measurements are and the technique that they're prescribing in the pattern. So the first thing we're going to do, I have a square that is 2.5 by 4.5 inches. It's actually a rectangle, not a square. I do know my geometry some days. Anyway, so my finished size will be 2x4. That extra ½ inch, of course, is my seam allowances. Then I also have 2 squares that are 2.5 inches square. You calculate your finished rectangle piece and add a ½ inch, and how tall it is how tall plus a ½ inch your squares are. Now we're going to draw corner to corner. The easiest thing for me to do is to line up my points on my mat, and then I can draw that corner to corner. The more accurate you are at this point, the better outcome you'll have. Okay, so just remember that. So I'm just going to draw that corner to corner, do my second one. Yes, there are things you can do to help speed the process up. A lot of people like the cluck cluck sew tape. I do too. However, for flying geese, I tend to prefer to draw my lines corner to corner. All right, let's go over to the sewing machine. Okay, today I am on my Fluff Creative icon, and I have my open toe applique foot on. And it should be a Microtex needle. So when we are getting ready to sew our flying geese, we need to remember that we put our sky, this is the goose part, this is the sky part, going the right direction. So I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to match up my corners. And I recommend massive quantities of pins. Not really, but 3 pins should do it. But you want to get everything nice and lined up. Now, if you have followed me recently, one of my best performing reels on Instagram is the open toe foot for applique. But today we're going to use it for following our sewing line. And it's going to be fabulous. And you also know I like my enders and leaders, so we're going to put one in. I have one ready to go. And I've pinned 3 places on my corner square for my flying goose. And now I am ready to start to sew. And I find that it's easier to start on one corner than the other corner. So this inside corner is the easier corner for me. And I'm going to line up my corner also with this line on my machine throat plate. That's just the center. And I can keep it in line, make sure it stays down, and just sew on that line. Okay, now I'm going to show right here because I caught that. I sewed off my line and I know that's going to cause problems. So I'm going to take that out about 3 stitches back and we're going to fix that right now. I don't want anybody ever thinking that they can be 100% perfect all the time. That's just beyond the possibility. Okay. And I tend to swing a little bit when I come to the end of my squares sometimes. So you can watch that. If that's something that you do, you can be aware of that and pay attention. Much better. Now put my ender back in and we're going to take out our pins. Clip our leader and we'll go to the ironing board. So now we're at the ironing board. We need to press our first corner open. And there are all kinds of people who are going to say, go ahead and trim your square right now. I don't want to. I want to press my goose to my other half of my goose because I will know if I'm square enough or not. So I'm going to set my seam and then I'm going to fold this up. And I can see that I'm pretty square. I should barely see any, preferably see nothing underneath that square, but I have a tiny bit. That's totally fine. I know I'm okay. And if I really want to be super accurate with this, I can cut out just the center fabric right here and leave everything else to sew it in. It's a little bulkier, I know, but it's also a lot more accurate because I already know that this part, the rectangle, was right on. So let's go trim and then we'll come back and sew the other part on. Okay, so remember I told you that we could trim out this centerpiece. I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to fold my background to the back and fold this. I'm going to put my 1/4 inch seam on my sewing line right there. See this black line is on my sewing line. And now I'm going to cut just the center. Forgot what camera to look at. I'm going to cut just the center off and I have that little bit of waste. We can save this if you want to. You don't have to. But then I have this perfect rectangle just like this. You can see it lines up perfectly and I'm good. But if I don't want that bulk, then I'm going to go ahead and trim that extra off, which I'm going to do today. Just take that off. That's just a little trick. If you want to be super accurate, you can just cut the one side off and you will see when you're being accurate and when for some reason the fabric, the thread, the cutting, everything works against you, and sometimes that happens. So there's half the goose made. Let's go finish it. Okay, so now we're going to do right sides together, and this is really important that you pay attention and swing this diagonal line going the opposite. If you do it the same way, that's a totally different technique, and we're not doing that technique. We want to make a flying goose, so we're going to hit it this way. And again, we're going to line everything up, corners lined up, and put my 3 pins in. Now we're ready to sew down this line, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. Okay, then take my pins out, and now we can go to the iron, press and set my seam, and then fold this back and make sure that everything lines up really nicely, which it does, and set the iron down. There will be a tendency, I know I have the tendency to take the edge of the iron and help push this fabric back. And if you do that, you're going to distort your triangles. That's a bias seam. and it will distort. Use your clapper, let it set for a few minutes, and let's go trim it. And I'll show you how perfect we are. Do my flying geese always turn out like this? No, they don't. But again, this is a very slow method because it's one at a time. And unless I'm making a scrappy quilt with a whole lot of different flying geese, this would be what I do. Now let me put my block lock ruler on, and you can see how close to accurate we are. There's no trimming necessary. It's perfect. It might be a little short in a couple of places, like on these corners, but that's a pretty good thing. This is your least accurate way of making flying geese. It's your slowest way. Mark it carefully, pin it carefully, and cut it carefully. You will have excellent results, and they'll work. But like I said, this is probably the least accurate way.